Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am a co-host for the fabulous Horror Mayhem 2024. This is the third year where BookTube is celebrating Horror Mayhem, the event where everyone is encouraged to read horror. Now, this event was created by the bookish Bryants, Scott and Becky. Unfortunately, Scott is having some health issues and will not be able to be a host for this event this year. We hope he will return for 2025. But now, as I said, Horror Mayhem is about celebrating reading horror. And we have created some weekly prompts and a bingo card. Now, you do not have to follow the prompts. You do not have to check off anything on the bingo card. All you have to do to participate in Horror Mayhem is read one little horror story or book of your choice. The general outlines for Horror Mayhem is to encourage reading shorter fiction, under 250 pages, under 200 pages. We don't like to get too exact because people have different ideas of what they mean by short. You also may want to read a longer work of horror fiction in May, and that's just fine too. So I have a whole list of the 36 bingo prompts. I'm not going to read them out. I'm going to place them in the description of this video. I will also provide a link where you can print out this list in the form of a bingo card or a checklist. And it's kind of fun because they have 30 different horror-related themes, and you can see how many you're going to get in a month. So what is the first week? The first week is local horror. This could either be an author that lives in your area or a story set in this area, the area where you live. It's entirely up to you. You can also sort of fudge what you consider local. If you grew up in one area of the world or now living in a different one, and you want to go back to your original one as local, that's fine too. Describe local as much as you want. You may want to limit it to a region, to a state, to a city. It's all up to you. But it's about reading local horror. And what will I be reading for local horror? I have an anthology on my Kindle, Dark Corners of the Old Dominion, edited by Joseph Madre and Michael Rook. This is horror stories written by authors living in Virginia or set in Virginia. Since I live in Virginia right now, this is a pretty much a must for me to read for this event. Week number 2, movie horror. This could be a book that was made into a movie or a short story that was made into a movie. It could be a horror story about the movies. There are a few good ones. It's entirely up to you. And what will I be reading? Well, I have an anthology on my Kindle, Classic Monsters Unleashed, edited by James Alacone. This is short stories about the classic monsters of the movies. So this is a real shoo-in. It is also available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle and you want to read about some of the classic movie monsters, I think this is a good choice. Now, I have not read any of the stories in this anthology, so it's just a suggestion to check it out. No real saying what stories are better than the other. I also have some physical books that can count for here. This is The Ghouls, edited by Peter Henning, and this contains some really fabulous old stories that were made into movies. You have The Phantom of the Opera, might be a little long. The Magician by Somerset Maugham, again, a little long. Freaks by Todd Robbins, I have never read the short story that movie was based on. That's a pretty good idea. They have The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson, The Beast with Five Fingers, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms by Ray Bradbury, The Fly. Now, The Fly itself, the original novella, is really an interesting read and kind of different from the movies. So maybe something from here. I also have something a little more contemporary. This is a midnight premiere edited by Tom Piccirilli. And in the description, it says, in the midnight premiere, you'll discover how many of these authors have worked in film as screenwriters, actors, and directors, and put their particular experience to use in showing you the dark underside of Hollywood dream and the La La Land facade. I can definitely find something in there. Week number 3, classic horror. Classic horror is going to be up for negotiation. I'm a little bit older than some people, so my definition of a classic may be different from someone who is younger. Someone else in one of these videos had a cutoff date of 1980. You know, I still think of people in the 80s, maybe contemporary, maybe not. But you know, I'll kind of go for it as a rough call. Would make me a classic myself, but we shall see. And what will I be reading? Well, no big surprise here. I have a Kindle anthology. The Greatest Ghost and Horror Stories Ever Written. This is a collection of public domain stories. You have Edgar Allan Poe, Arthur Machen, Arlington Blackwood. You have a few others. And it's going to be a good collection because it's 5,158 pages long, according to my Kindle. I will not be reading that whole book during Horror Mayhem, but I think I can find a few good classic stories. I have a couple other classic anthologies that I might pull something out of. I have The Rivals of Frankenstein, edited by Michael Perry. These are sort of Frankenstein-inspired short stories. You have The Colossus of Yorgolain by Clark Ashton Smith. You have The Dancing Partner by Jerome K. Jerome. I did not know the author of 3 Men and a Dog wrote a Frankenstein-inspired horror story. Just from Market Book Time for Elvis, I think I really should pick that one up. You have Almost Human by Robert Bloch. Lots of good stuff in here. Science fiction terror tales. This is good for one of the prompts because this is stories that mix science fiction and horror together. And what are some of the examples? You will have Arena by Frederick Brown. That story actually inspired a Star Trek episode. The Leech by Robert Sheckley. Flies by Isaac Asimov. They by Robert A. Heinlein. Let Me Live in a House by Chad Oliver. And a bunch of other people. Maybe I'll find something in here too. Continuing on with classic, and this is getting into that gray area whether this should be classic or the next week contemporary. This is Dark Forces, 24 Terror Tales. And this are original tales to this anthology. By nowadays, a lot of these are going to be re-anthologized elsewhere, but you have the original publication of Stephen King's The Mist. You have The Enemy by Isaac Singer. That's a curious one. He was a Jewish man that immigrated from Europe, early on, and he wrote his stories in Yiddish. What else? You have The Children of the Kingdom by T.E.D. Klein. Yeah, that's a great story too. So kind of, this one is like that. Is it classic? Is it contemporary? And week 4 is contemporary horror. And what am I going to be reading for contemporary horror? Are you ready for my Kindle editions? I'm going to be reading things from Lurking in the Dark, edited by Regina St. Clair. This is a BookTube horror anthology because all the authors are on BookTube. And when this book was published, which is a little over a year ago, all the authors were on BookTube. So I'm really eager to get some of the short stories out of this book read. I have read about a half dozen or so already, but I'll read a few more. Also, if you have a Kindle, it is currently on Kindle Unlimited. So it's really something you should pick up if you have the Kindle Unlimited. I'm also going to be looking at Splatterpunk's Basement of Horror, edited by Jack Benty. This is recently published. It is also on Kindle Unlimited. I'm not sure if the stories are current or older. It might, again, be a mix of contemporary and some of the newer classic. And I have some other books that have some contemporary stories that might be interesting. This is Monsters, 20 Tales of Giant Creature Terror. This is just a book about giant monsters, published in 2007. I have not read anything out of here yet, so who knows? Revelations by Douglas E. Winter. This is all sort of horror stories based on revelations. We have The Big Blow by Joe R. Linsdale. If I Should Die Before I Wake, David Morrell. Now, what's curious, I've noticed, is that there's sort of a timeline in these stories, even though they're rather contemporary. The one called The Big Blow is set in 1910. 1900. The 1910 story, If I Should Die Before I Wake, is 1910. Arians and Absinthe, Paul Wilson, 1920. Triads by Poppy Z. Bright and Christina Forst, 1930. And it goes all the way down to 1990. So maybe something out of here. Now, some people like Richard Lehman. Some people sort of have problems with Richard Lehman. But here is an anthology of Richard Lehman-inspired short stories in Lehman's terms, edited by Kelly Lehman and Steve Gerlach. Kelly Lehman was Richard Lehman's daughter. And some of the stories we have in here is Jack Ketchum, Bentley Little, Regina Michael, Alan Beats, Brian King, Brian Freeman, and others. So here's another possibility to pull some contemporary short stories out of. And the last one I have is, again, a mix of some contemporary and some classic. This is Foundations of Fear, edited by David G. Hartwell. Lots of great stories. Again, a mixture of contemporary and classic. And if I can get to the page for classic, you could have Don't Look Now by Daphne du Maurier, or you could have The Lurking Duck by Scott Baker, 1983. These are really sort of edging towards the classic territory and not as many contemporary. Well, anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you will join us for Horror Mayhem and read some good horror. Keep on reading.